Welcome to Western Blotting Training Module. Western blotting is an important technique used in cell and molecular biology for protein separation and detection. It enables the separation and identification of the specific protein of interest from a complex mixture of proteins. A typical Western blot technique includes the following steps: separation by size, transfer of protein to a solid support, and detecting target protein using antibodies. To separate the macromolecules in a sample, SDS page technique can be used. The first step in the SDS page procedure is sample preparation so that a loading buffer containing SDS, beta-mercaptoethanol, bromophenol, and glycerol is added to the protein samples. First, fill the tray with blotting buffer. You'll be using this buffer to equilibrate your gel prior to starting the Western blot. Next, remove the gel from the gel cassette using the opening key. Line up the arrows on the opening lever with the 4 arrows on the cassette to open the cassette. After trimming the top and bottom of the gel with a straight edge, equilibrate the gel in the tray with blotting buffer for 15 minutes on a rocking platform. In another tray, pour some blotting buffer enough to dip fiber pads. Pre-soak 2 fiber pads in blotting buffer so that they are thoroughly soaked. Now, we need to make a blotting sandwich. Pick a container large enough to fit the gel holder and add enough blotting buffer until the container is filled approximately 1 centimeter deep. Place the gel holder cassette in the container with the black side down and immersed in the buffer, and the white side up and out of the buffer. Lay 1 fiber pad on the black plastic. Next, wet a piece of blotting paper and place it on top of the fiber pad. Be careful to avoid any bubbles between the pad and the paper and make certain the buffer covers the paper. Now, retrieve the gel from the container on the rocking platform and carefully place it squarely on top of the blotting paper. Be careful to avoid any bubbles between the gel and the blotting paper. Obtain a piece of nitrocellulose membrane and wet the membrane with blotting buffer. Now, carefully place the membrane squarely on the gel. Avoid moving the membrane once placed on the gel, as protein will begin to blot immediately. Use a roller to remove any air bubbles between the gel and the membrane. Now, place a second sheet of wet blotting paper on top of the nitrocellulose membrane. Place a second wet fiber pad on top of the blotting paper. Now, fold the clear plastic side of the gel holder over the sandwich and clamp it to the black plastic side by closing the white clip. This tight fit will squeeze the sandwich together. Pick up the inner module in the electrophoresis chamber. Place the gel cassette inside the inner module such that the black side of the cassette is adjacent to the black side of the inner module. Now, place the inner module back into the electrophoresis chamber. Now, add some loading buffer to the gel cassette in the inner module. Add a frozen cooling unit in the chamber. Fill the electrophoresis chamber with blotting buffer. Place the lid on the electrophoresis chamber. Make sure the connecting leads are connected properly, red to red and black to black. Now, turn on the power supply and set the voltage to 20 volts and set the timer to 2.5 hours. Now, turn off the power supply, disassemble the electrophoresis chamber and take the gel cassette out. Place the cassette in a container filled with blotting buffer with the black side down. Starting from the fiber pad, remove each layer until you reach the nitrocellulose membrane. As you remove the membrane, notice that the proteins have been transferred from the gel to the membrane. Note that the kaleidoscope prestain standards have been transferred and can be seen on both sides of the membrane. You can also see that there are no proteins on the gel. Immerse the membrane in 25 milliliters of blotting solution and incubate it at room temperature on a rocking platform. Pour off the blotting solution. Add 10 milliliters of primary antibody and incubate it for 10 to 20 minutes on the rocking platform. The platform should be set at a faster speed to ensure constant coverage of the membrane. Now, pour off the primary antibody. Rinse the membrane quickly in 50 milliliters of wash buffer and then discard the wash buffer. Add another 50 milliliters of wash buffer to the membrane and let it wash for 3 minutes on the rocking platform at a medium speed setting. Now, pour off the wash buffer. Now add 10 milliliters of secondary antibody and incubate the membrane for 10 to 15 minutes on the rocking platform at a fast speed. Pour off the secondary antibody. Rinse the membrane quickly with 50 milliliters of wash buffer and discard the wash buffer. Add another 50 milliliters of wash buffer and wash the membrane for 3 minutes on the rocking platform at a medium speed setting. Discard the wash buffer. Add 10 milliliters of substrate. Incubate the membrane with the substrate for 10 to 30 minutes on the rocking platform. Watch for the color development. Once the color has been developed, rinse the membrane twice with distilled water and blot dry with a paper towel. Air dry for 3 to 60 minutes and then cover in plastic wrap for storage.